All right. Hi, welcome back. I'm Bill Quinn, and I am joined by Sheila Holm. Sheila, thank you again for making time for us today.
It's awesome to be back on with you. It's been a while. A lot of things
It,
going on.
it has been a bit of time, and when we take a break and then come back, there seems to be just a plethora of stuff to cover. So, thank you for making time. Perhaps it makes sense to start with the latest that we're hearing on Tina Peters. We've spoken of her a number of times in the last few weeks, and the situation seems to be becoming even more acute, perhaps. So, can you share what you understand about the current status with Tina?
But we have a brand new amendment to the presidential pardon. And so that went in, I believe that was dated on the 6th. I don't know if it went in on the 6th or the 7th, but it's lengthy, it's thorough, explains the horrific things that are happening to Tina Peters, um, the ignoring of all of her rights, all of her requests, all of what she needs. It's powerful. And so I think it's important for the people to understand we're doing everything that is that we can do. And when it's a republic, it's up to us. It's not up to the president to fix everything, but this is an option for the president because this was supposed to be, if they were going to do a case, a federal case. This was a state case. They made it a state case. They gave her a horrific sentence on a state case for bringing the truth to the court. And that's the problem that we've been climbing uphill about ever since, is that when you bring the truth into the court, that is supposed to be heard. And it's not being heard. And they did an overreach because it was a federal election. What she noticed was international um, crimes against our election and against our nation, which are war crimes in a federal election. And they're not listening, don't want to listen, just want her to not have a voice and be locked up. So I know people are saying, well, why do we keep bringing back Tina Peters? Because Tina Peters is a patriot in this country. And it's up to we, the people, in order to make this an issue. It's up to we, the people, to insist that they come back to the rule of law and do what's right. And right now, they're still refusing to. So I'm really grateful this amendment went into the president for a presidential pardon, because if that's issued, and everything lines up, then there can be action against the state of Colorado for what they've done, because they've operated outside of the law. They've operated beyond their capability and ability at their level to do what they've done to Tina Peters.
It's interesting. Since we spoke last, a number of people have spoken up and said, the supposed, what Jenna Greswold called, messing with the election system in Colorado was nothing like messing with the system. It was attempting and did protect the rights of the people in Colorado and in Mesa County by making the creating the ability to look at the changes that are now evident before and after Dominion got into those systems and made modifications. And folks are calling out, you can see the actual changes and understand what was being done thanks to Tina Peters. And of course, she was in charge of these systems and had perfect right to take whatever steps that she felt were necessary in order to protect that data and work on behalf of the people. We the people, as we always say. So it's particularly egregious to me that that they continue to keep her incarcerated, and it you stand back from it and you say, why? Well, one reason might be keep her quiet. Don't let her, in a position to work with others to really explain this, to out what was done in Colorado and probably elsewhere. It becomes so horrific, and people, I think, and hope and pray are recognizing it. There do seem to be a lot of people standing up saying, we have to fix this problem, and so day by day goes by, and we hear I think the latest that I've seen from 107 and others is that her condition is unfortunately continuing to worsen a bit. And while they're not calling for additional calls to be made to Colorado or to the president, they are saying, please pray that the good Lord intervenes and causes a change in the hearts of those who could make change here.
Well, imprisoning the truth speakers is what they've done from the beginning of our nation. The Cherokee and all the people who knew the truth of you don't have any rights to move these Native Americans out of their homes and off of their land, and they fought. Every one of those people were sent to prison and put in the hard labor camp division of the prison system. That's back in the early 1800s. We weren't even a nation very long at that time. And by the 1900s, there was a Bernie Sanders type. His name was Eugene Debs, D-E-B-S. And he kept getting more and more votes in every election as a socialist, strict socialist party candidate. So he kept getting more and more votes. And so instead of just giving him 650,000 to go buy a vacation home and get out of the election process, they put him in prison. And he got more votes in prison, and he'd been running since back in the 1800s, and he got more votes in prison because he was in prison because of what they did to him. And then as soon as the election was over, they let him out of prison. But what Tina found is international, and she has witness statements from the people and has the exact information. And there is a connection to Venezuela. Patrick Byrne's been talking about this on several interviews. And that witness, they won't even allow any of this. They won't allow any of this to even go into an appeal process. They're blocking every option. And we need to watch this, because what they have done from the beginning of this country is the same thing they're doing to Tina Peters. So if we want a different result, then we have to start standing up for someone and not just on social media. And so it's up to we the people. This is our country, and a republic is of, by, and for the people. It's not, they flipped the switch and made it that the government was what was important in this nation, and it's not. The government is only there to do what the people want them to do. And instead, they've all become, at the top, they've all become international diplomat, negotiators of deals. They've turned it into a money process at the top, and they're not representing the people anymore. There isn't anything happening for the people. There was a strange thing, and I answered this out on Twitter. There was a guy that said, breaking news, did you know that there's 290,000 or 390,000 people that are million people, I think, that are getting all these Social Security numbers and getting all these Social Security benefits? Because they keep saying there's 4 million that came in during the time of Biden. And I proved that there were, it went from 4.5 to 9.9 to 12 and on up back at the turn of the century in 2000. And between 98 and 2002, there were almost 30 million that were filing reports and claims with the Federal Trade Commission that there are people ruining my Social Security number and doing deals and obtaining credit. And I didn't even know that system was available. And so if that was the number at that time, it was never as much of a flood as it was during the Biden time. But anyway, all these Social Security numbers being issued, and there are dead people. There are that many dead people getting Social Security. How are they calculating Social Security for people who are dead? How are they calculating Social Security for people who are not even born yet? Elon Musk just announced on Joe Rogan, he said there are two things that I think we should have 1 or 2 people at every Social Security office get on the phone. Number one, start checking people for their birth year, give them the birth date, because these people are collecting benefits and they're 200 and 300 years old. And then the other side is there are people collecting Social Security benefits in this country now that have given a birth date that doesn't even exist yet. They're not born yet. It's a future date they have submitted, and Social Security has calculated a benefit and is sending them a benefit. Now, Ronald Reagan warned us when he was president. And so President Reagan said, did you know there's no Social Security fund? There is nothing there. I want you to know that all it was a tax to charge the employer and charge the employee. So whether this can be corrected, but from the other side, we have better news for Americans, because Americans that have been paying taxes are due to receive something back. And the president has said, and there is a video on this that has been shared all over social media, where the president said, soon, very soon, with everything I'm doing with all these tariffs, you're probably not going to have a reason, or there's going to be nothing that you're going to have to pay any income tax on. And
Yep.
so that's going to shift everything in this country back to the truth, because all of this was set up in 1913 when they did the
No.
whole banking situation and signed everything in 1910, and then brought in Woodrow Wilson in 1913. And people said, well, it was a brand new law. It was more than a law. They made an amendment of our Constitution. If you go back and look, it could be 13, 14, right in that range. They
Mhm.
made amendments to the Constitution, and they did it within days of him becoming the president during his first term. He's the one that set up the League of Nations that became the UN. I mean, it's just craziness what happened in that short period of time, but it's all still in effect. So, but it's all being pulled apart. It's all being pulled apart. It just, everybody wonders still, when's there going to be a rest? I want rest. And there's all sorts of memes on the internet. And it's not important to see people getting arrested yet, because the layers of evil spread all across this nation. And they spread in all different activities, departments, corporations. It's everywhere. And because it's so pervasive, that's why the big issue right now is get the illegal people out, and also deal with the people who harbored those illegals, because they have arrested military families who were transporting illegals on the military base to get around the checkpoint in California. How could you do that when now we've proven you've had governors, judges, senators, congresspeople harboring these people, sometimes even on one or two of their properties that they
Mhm.
own? And so there are people involved in this, and all of them have to be dealt with. But what we're still not considering, because people think that we have to do it to Pelosi, we have to do it to Schiff, we have to do it to Hillary. Those aren't the important people. The important people are the kingpins above them. And you don't arrest the people who would give you more information on the people above them. And they aren't going to do it until they're at that point where now the day is you're being raided. But Zelensky was raided 2 weeks ago. This last week, the big person in Minnesota, of the Somalia community, who was a politician, his home was raided and his information was raided. And this is how deep all of this evil goes. He seems to be, from what's been released so far, and very little of what's going on about all of that is being released. But what we know so far socially in social media is the fact that he had communications globally with the idea of complete takeover of this nation after the 26th election, and that everything is a go. We just have to be patient to get through that election. What we don't know on the ground until we see these kinds of reports, just how bad the evil is, just how pervasive it is, how they've all come here to do this, but they've been allowed to do this. So here's who gets arrested after all. It's all the people involved in it. It's all the people bringing them in. It's all the people that made it available. It's the people who negotiated for all of this to happen. It's the people, and all of that has to be researched and ready to go. It's not a case of just now this politician in Minnesota is going to pay the price for everything. Then all of the rest of the people get off. That's not how rule of law works. And our president made it very clear back at the time of the riots in 2020 and 2021. He said that he held up the Bible and said, this is our rule of law. And he has said again and again, we're going back to the rule of law. And so with so many people not taking oaths to the rule of law, so many state constitutions not being ratified to hold state representatives and state corporations and state business people up to their oaths as to what they're involved in on our behalf, There is so much we have to deal with. And so please don't keep wondering, when are you going to see arrests? Are you seeing these people out on the street? Because the brigs are full. The military-based brigs are full because most of this is turned over to military. They aren't going to be sitting in a jail somewhere. They're going to be sitting in a brig, and the military is going to take it over because all of these crimes against our country, that's what Tina Peters is trying to let people know about. And she didn't do the audit. She had it independently done to make sure it wasn't something in her department. How did this happen? She did it on behalf of we the people.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not finding a lot of people in Colorado standing up for her. You're finding people across the country talking in social media. But where are the people in Colorado that are so upset that their rights are gone if you've got somebody from Venezuela controlling your election? And those are treasonous crimes. Those are war crimes against our nation. The takeover of our nation is what's behind all of this since the 2020 election. But the takeover of our nation and the leadership, and I don't think I've been on since all of this has been revealed. As you go through book 4 and 5 and then into the new book, you're going to see that we have people who have been in top positions in our country who are not even documented Americans. It's not just the new mayor of New York. It's the former mayor of New York. De Blasio was Warren Wilhelm Jr. until his dad died and was Warren Wilhelm Sr. in 1979. Then he changed his name 3 times, but where's the legality of it? And then he turned it to be more Italian sounding with de Blasio. That isn't his name. It's not his first name, not his last name. And he was in there in a fake name, mayor of New York, making all these decisions. Yeah. So who are these people? So we have a lot of work to do in voter registration. We have a lot of work to do in so many areas. And so instead of focusing on what we can't finish or fix right now, we have to focus on what can I do today to help this be a better election in 26? What can I do?
Yeah. So there's several points there that I want to make sure we underscore. One is there is a feeling that 26 is vital. It's a firewall that we have to have change in order to make sure we don't get used again. We have a valid election and we don't lose further control. So that's piece one. Piece two is you mentioned how many people are involved in this. There was a discussion over the weekend where a number of folks that know this stuff are looking at it and looking through, in this case, the state of Georgia, and looking at those who have been involved at a state level and at a national level with regard to Georgia, and at a county level, and even down to local and municipalities. I mean, there seems to be this pervasive infiltration of, as you say, evil that says we're going to play along with this so that we have control, we have power, we have the money that comes with it. And it is daunting because there's so many. And the question that's being asked is, how do you go about pursuing that? And so that's an open question for many people. What are the right fulcrum points, to press on to try to make progress now where we can? It feels like, exposing the truth of it is one of the key ones, getting the truth out so people can understand what we're facing. And 2, calling out the bad guys when we see them act in bad ways. Does that sound right?
It's the beginning of the process, because when I was going through all this identity theft and when I was going through all the financial things, I went to the National Credit Bureau Association, Consumer Credit Bureau. There's the key, consumer. And their answer was merely about committing these crimes. Their answer was, nobody is committing crimes. I said, what do you mean? And they said, as a bureau, we're merely taking in information from consumers. That's our only responsibility. You've got 80 to 100 people with duplicate Social Security numbers of American citizens using that Social Security number to get credit, and nobody has committed a crime. We've never fixed it. We've never resolved it. So when I went to an attorney, he said, "You've probably lost tens of thousands of dollars." I said, "Yes." And he said, "So do you want to pay me 30 to 50 to $80,000 to fight it? Because I'll win. I can absolutely win. They're absolutely wrong. They've absolutely broken the law. Do you think they'll ever pay?" The government, Social Security and the credit bureaus will keep you, because they have full-time attorneys. They will keep you in court until you don't have any money left and you can't fight it anymore. And I don't want to see that happen to you. And I don't want to take more tens of thousands of dollars from you to get you to that point where they're going to do that to you, because that's what's happening. And guys, that was back in the early 1990s.
Mm.
And the FBI has never arrested the illegals. We've tried. We've put them in touch with people. We've connected them. We've made everything available, and nobody gets arrested. And so that's why I've said, don't be mad at Pam Bondi. Don't be mad at Kash Patel. Be grateful they're willing to take all the arrows they're taking from people who don't begin to understand how deep this is, how long it's gone on, all the layers of cover up that are already in the files and records that all have to be dealt with in order to get progress. Turning this ship around is not easy. Putting all this back the way it needs to be is not easy. And you think about what they're doing. You think they're getting much sleep? You think they're able to just go to work from 9 to 5 and say, that's it? I don't think so.
I sure hope not.
Well, because look at the pressure they're under. I mean, I saw it again all through the weekend. All these things. Got to fire Bondi, and now they've got those where they do tags on them, and they're getting them trending, and et cetera, et cetera. Stop. We've got people willing to take the slings and arrows against their life, their family, the threats, because they're up against the mountain of evil. And anyone who thinks it's going to be simple and it should have been done in 6 months, you have no idea how deep this is. You have no idea everything they did to cover everything up, because that's what didn't happen in the Republic. You don't vote and get a new president in November, and he doesn't even come into the office until January. They do all of this destructive work. They wouldn't do it if they were passing it from one member of the club to another member of the club, because they were all controlled anyway. Didn't matter. But can you imagine what they did, knowing that they weren't going to be in charge under the new president? Can you imagine what they've done to the records? Can you imagine what they've done for the cover-up? Look what Comey did out in the open. And Comey saying that it was all destroyed. Well, Comey didn't destroy his, and he was on private emails doing national business. It's just what has to be cleared up is so much bigger than anyone can possibly imagine, because President Jefferson warned us. He said, you cannot, if once the republic is corrupted, you cannot you cannot repair or heal the evil. It all has to be restructured. And that is exactly what has to happen. But you have to completely dismantle what they put on top in the corporation off of the republic to reestablish the republic. And he said it has to be completely redone. And that's what has to happen. But you can't do it with the evil people involved in it. Do you think there's anybody from the president on down who can trust more than a handful of people?
I don't think so. Matter of fact, that's been one of the topics of discussion in the last couple of weeks, is how many people right around Trump himself are not doing him service to get him the right information. There's folks that they claim are blocking information that should be getting to him. Others are reinterpreting information so that he doesn't know the right data. It's got to be just a daunting challenge, even with people that, many would have thought, oh, well, these people are okay, they're trustworthy. Mm-hmm. And now we're finding out even within those ranks, there's infiltration that is concerning.
Well, and even a big message came out about Susie Wiles on the Big Beautiful Bill.
Mm-hmm.
The guys knew why they weren't trying to block it. They weren't voting for it because the bill changed after the people said that, okay, now it's time to vote on it. Then they went back in and changed things and didn't report that they changed things. And so the guys were sending messages through Susie Wiles, and they didn't get to the president.
Mm-hmm.
So then the president was, they asked the president to come and meet with them, and he met with each of them individually. And they had given messages that never got to him. Now, if that's true, as digital soldiers, and that's what it's going to take in America, is these digital soldiers on social media. And that's what I kept saying when I sent things in about the Panama Canal. With all this being true, then what's happening with this and this? So we have the right and the authority to write to our people doing that final vote and saying, with all of this being true, was it true about Susie Wiles? Because it's out there now that Susie Wiles held the whole thing up. And now it's also out there that she's one of the main ones he can depend on. We have to help get to the truth of these things instead of just let those messages be out there on social media. We've got to clean things up. Otherwise, we're operating the same way as the fake media, because it's fake news if it's not exactly what happened.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, back during the campaign, many people remember that there were very concerning reports that Susie Wiles and Chris Lesavita as well were doing things that for example, picking ad placements that were not the most efficient and getting apparently some funding personally from some of those. Is that appropriate? I mean, I guess it depends on what their agreement was with the president for supporting his campaign. But it sure doesn't seem ethical to me. I'm going to pick a different way of doing the ad so I make money. Doesn't feel right to me. And then the question becomes, well, how long has this been going on? Is it going all the way back to his beginning administration? It would seem so. I think that dynamic has existed. And, good Lord willing, hopefully there are people near him that will get the right information or the majority of it to him with our help where we can, as we go along.
Yeah, I don't have any information that any of that happened with the ads. I know that happens in campaigns, but I haven't heard anything about President Trump's campaign.
We reported it when it was going on, and I believe it was based in a lot of facts and documents back in those days. It was early 24, if I recall correctly, that we reported it.
Well, before 24, there was a big issue with WinRed, but that was dealt with. As far as I know, that was dealt with. They're still out there. They're still using websites and still collecting money from people. But it becomes a personal thing. Everyone thinks that everything they do with all of these things goes straight to the president. It never does. It never does. We did a thing by sending FedEx only exactly to the address at Mar-a-Lago and putting the funds in the FedEx envelope and making sure it was tracked and received because nothing was going through. So we're in very, very, very unique times. It's just like there was a big thing about the Brunson case this week. And when Dark Knight, and I know Scotty Films and Dark Knight, and they're very close with each other and share films back and forth. And they're both working on intel releases to the people from the military side. And I know both of them and follow both of them. And Dark Knight sent me something and I answered it out on Twitter, and it was about the Brunson case. And the Brunson case, when I was on an interview with Charlie Ward, many of you probably saw it. I don't do those much. And Charlie was on, and it was a panel. And he had Derek Johnson on, and then Derek Johnson stayed on with my time. So it came into being more people instead of, there was a Derek Johnson part of the interview, and then a Sheila Holm part of the interview, and then Jan Helper Hayes. And I'd never been on with Jan Helper Hayes. She knew all about me, but I don't know that much about her. And when she came on, so now it was Derek and Sheila and Jan all at the same time, because I was the middle person for the middle hour. And so it turned into a panel. And Jan was talking about Lloyd Brunson signing an NDA, but and he had shared it with her. And she didn't sign the NDA. So she said on this global panel, she's saying, I can share with you what it is. They've already decided the case. They just can't release it yet, et cetera, et cetera. And so I didn't say anything. And before the break, Charlie said, well, do you have anything else before the break? And I said, can I clear something up? And he said, yes. And I said, well, let me explain how the U.S. Constitution works. The Supreme Court only provides an opinion or a ruling. That's what they provide. It was mistaken to think they make law. And not only was Roe versus Wade turned back, but there are 6 more that became considered law. They became something people depended on that was already law. And the Supreme Court, no court makes law from the bench. No court. And that's why the lawfare is court decisions being used to gain a leverage in a court case when that opinion is just that opinion based on the facts of that case. It doesn't make law. The judicial branch doesn't make law. None of them do. But using it to make other cases as though that's now law, that's a precedent, and we use that to decide the case.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the problem. Because it's only a ruling, an opinion, if that opinion was already determined, which it cannot be yet because there's other factors, and I'll explain, because it's not an opinion yet, it's not a law, there is no NDA. I knew there was no NDA. I'm the one who got Lloyd Brunson out on interviews, several interviews, because he wasn't out there and the case wasn't known. Raylan had already filed a case, and that case is still there. Then Lloyd filed the case. That case is still there. Then Raylan filed another case, and when he filed the next case, then that's when the 3 judges, Sotomayor, Kagan, and Brown-Jackson, Kenji Brown-Jackson, the new one, those 3 had to recuse themselves because they were now named as defendants for not allowing his case to be even redocketed, and they can't choose to do that. And so now they're defendants and they had to recuse themselves, and none of this is determined yet. So let me tell you why. So back to Jan and what happened with Charlie Ward is that I said, how can you decide a Supreme Court case when the defendant is the President of the United States? And that defendant, as the President of the United States, has to be the one to enforce a ruling against the President of the United States. How's that even feasible or possible? And so everybody was just stunned. And he said, I never knew that. And I said, the requirements. And then I didn't go into the other cases, but now I'm going to, because what happened this weekend when Dark Knight sent this to me, and you can find it on my Twitter feed. When Dark Knight sent this to me, he said he wanted to know what I thought about it. And because now Jan is saying that she went to Clarence Thomas, who's a Supreme Court justice, and the justice said they have to delay announcing the ruling of the case, which is the same thing as there's an NDA, but nobody knows about it yet, is we've already decided on a case and we haven't issued it yet. And that doesn't happen either. Now, here's why the Brunson case isn't able to be concluded yet. And here's the difference in the Supreme Court people don't seem to understand. The Supreme Court is a people's court. The Supreme Court is there for us to redress grievances. Have we got a grievance about the constitutional responsibility of our people to take an oath to the Constitution, to sit in the chair, to make the decisions in Congress, to make laws, to spend our money, to sit in the seat? Absolutely. And that redress of grievance cannot be ignored. That redress of grievance has to be resolved. But it's been so long since we, the people, stood up with a redress of grievance to the Supreme Court, because it's not to go to your county court, your state court, your federal court. They were turned back on all of them, had to file all these appeals. It took forever to get to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is a people's court. There are people now realizing this and filing direct with the Supreme Court. for an opinion on things, because did you know that the amendments to the Constitution are from revolutionary times because they were forcing people to house British soldiers who were killing them and their neighbors? And they had to get the redress of grievance with the Supreme Court, and it became amendment to the Constitution. 3 and 4 are major examples. If you look at 3 and 4 amendments, I think Federal Reserve and IRS is way down at 13, 14. So 3 and 4 is way back in time of this country. And it's been so long since it happened. If you think back on Amy Coney Barrett, she was so brilliant, didn't need notes, remember? She didn't have to look at anything. She could just say all these things. It was so powerful. But what were one of the rights awarded to we the people that she couldn't remember? There was one. Out of the whole list, there was one. It was redress of grievance, because nobody plans on doing redress of grievance. Nobody's been doing redress of grievance. Nobody's looking at the process to begin the redress of grievance, because it's not to go through all these lower courts, because that Supreme Court is the people's court. It's a completely different structure than people think about. And so now when she said, now she talked to Clarence Thomas, and Clarence Thomas is delaying and told her they're delaying the decision and releasing the decision. It's like, I had to say something, because the Supreme Court doesn't make an opinion ruling and hold it secret from the people.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court can't make a decision on that, because guess what we found out? And many of you who've been following me for a while already know about these cases. But the Todd Callender, the international attorney, we met way back during the whole time of 20 and 21 and the genocide and all of the stuff that was happening regarding the vaccines, et cetera, et cetera. So we were on this email listing, and that's how he found out about me. And then when the Georgia Guidestones went down, he found out more about me. Then we started having regular conversation. That was in 22. And when I talked to him about what was happening with the Brunson case, because the Brunson case had come forward in 22, I said, what if, like happened to me in San Diego, how could all of those judges and law firms operate outside of the law? Do you suppose they didn't take their oath? And he said, judge is not taking an oath. He thought it was kind of an odd, how could you be a judge and not take the oath to be a judge? And it could be, they take an oath every time you're in a courtroom. Well, this is the research they did. So anybody that hasn't heard me talk about this, he did all the research, and that's how he found the 45 points and handed them to me that were read to our congressional record. How did that happen? He ended up going out looking for, can anyone in a position in America be in a position and not take an oath? And he found avoid all loyalty oaths. And in my new book, An Eternal Plan, point 13 is avoid all loyalty oaths. Now, they take oaths to their organizations that they're involved in, but they don't take an oath to the Constitution, thinking that they're not going to be tried for treason because they didn't take an oath to America. So you can't try them for that, but they still sat in the seat. They still took the payroll. They still made decisions. They still made laws. They still spent our money. All of these people in Congress. Well, the judges were making decisions every day. And did you know even all of the judges, the federal judges that were involved in the J6 cases, didn't take their oath? So when Todd found out all of this and handed me the 45 points, that's 3 years ago when I started doing the research on the new book. And he filed a case April 18 of 2023 with the circuit court. And that was that all of these federal judges chose not to cure, just like Congress. They just ignored everything. So did the judges. They don't care because they're avoiding all loyalty oaths. So their loyalty is not to America. We have a much bigger situation than the Brunson case. And I don't know if Jan is an American. She's mainly in Europe. So maybe she's become a European and no longer an American citizen, or maybe just living in Europe. I don't know. But there aren't many people at the top level of research and investigative reporting in America that don't know about this status and how severe it is in America, because we've had judges on the bench not taking an oath to our Constitution in America, making decisions against American citizens. And now you're noticing there's some of the judges that have been harboring the illegals. And when they find out ICE comes in, they hide the illegals and get them out the back door of the courts because they're advised, because they're a judge, that ICE is coming in your court and this is what they're going to do because you're seeing this person today. And the judge decides to help the illegal and not cooperate with ICE. You're only seeing surface things, but that's why I'm taking a moment to share this. And that's why Dark Knight sent it to me, because he knew that I'd already shared all of this before. Because where we're at such a critical point in our country. And it's not about, I don't care when Schiff gets arrested. I don't care when Pelosi gets arrested. But do you see him on the street anymore? You think you see him. You think you see him in videos, but do you really see him? Remember how President Trump said, anyone seen Hunter? Because I want to know if you've seen Hunter. I don't mean a video of Hunter. I don't mean you think you saw him in the gallery or he's introducing a new. I mean, have you seen Hunter? You know what he looks like and you have seen him. He loves to do a little trolling. He tells us all the time, I love a little trolling in the morning. And boom, he says, notice. And this is what he's so good at. Because all of this activity with the illegals none of it has been addressed by the people in position being paid to protect we the people from an illegal invasion in this country. So let me just button this up. I don't mean to take a lot of our time today on this, but it's so critical to understand that the Brunson case is so much bigger than you can possibly imagine, and how it was so powerful that Rayland went back in with a new part to the case, named those 3 Superior Court judges, and they recused themselves within 24 hours. They knew. They weren't willing to do it. They didn't recuse themselves before he filed the case. But when he filed the case, they recused themselves immediately. Because they realized now they're defendants on the same case because of what they've done. I don't know if you've sat down and heard Loy. He's going to be introducing his coffee table book at General Flynn's event on the 16th. And if you go on his website, I think it's just loybrunson.com. And it's this new coffee book about the Constitution. And just a powerful stand they've done. And he's got the pamphlet Constitution that you can carry with you, refer to the Constitution. It'd be good to sit down with your family and study the Constitution, because when I mention these things to people, they don't know the Constitution. And here's what's really funny. I just found out something today from a brilliant researcher. Her name's Gina. I think you know her, William, but she's pulled her website down right now because she has redress of grievance on there. She has the states that don't have a ratified constitution on there. And did you know that I know the 1850 California Constitution, because I know the Nebraska 1867 Constitution. So I know, because I lived in Nebraska a fair amount of time growing up, and then my additional college and adult life is in California. And so I read the Constitution when I live in that state. And did you know that that Constitution is not the first original Constitution? Gina found original constitutions to California. 1850 is not the first one. But in 1850, they're still saying no lottery. So we the people, in order to form a more perfect union, in order to help people like Tina, in order to clean up our elections, in order to clean up the people who are actually candidates by voter registration, do they meet the qualifications? There's so much that we can do. There's so much we can help with. Just in our own individual lives. Have you moved and not removed your old voter registration? The reason they haven't cleaned them up, they're letting people use that ballot. That's why, if you haven't voted in a while, and then that's why President said, everybody go out and vote. Because those of you who have not been voting, they are sending people to vote your ballot. And we found that out. That's why there's so many people. Nobody looked at it in the elections. They said, I got to the ballot box and they said I'd already voted and I hadn't voted. People were shocked.
Bless you.
That's how they did it. That's how they did it.
Yep.
So I've been on a rant for a while, but I want you guys to know the depth of this. And it's so frustrating to hear somebody say that about Lloyd Brunson, and then to say that about a Supreme Court justice when that is not what's going on. The Supreme Court justices that are lawful and true are very concerned and want to get to the bottom of this. And there are more cases. I'm just telling you about the cases I know, but they're all related because it's all about the fact these people have not been committed to our country for generations. And we thought they were working for us. We didn't know. So now that we know and they're not committed to us, it's more widespread than you can imagine. And the states that don't, they know which states don't have ratified constitutions. Because did you know that the states have to have, I think it's 66.5 or whatever, 0.7 to get the state constitution ratified? They've never even brought it up to vote. And it's not for your state assembly or state senate or Congress to do it. It's we the people. It has to be on the ballot. And we have to review it and we have to vote to ratify it as our Constitution. So the original constitutions were all about God the Father in the year of our Lord. It was all of that. They aren't ratified. They look good, but they're not ratified. And so we have work to do.
Boy, sure sounds like it. You mentioned the voter rolls and the issues there. Of course, here in Georgia, that's particularly egregious because we've got a number of folks like Jason Frazier and Kevin Monkla and others who have done deep research for now many years. They can point to, thousands upon thousands of registrations where a name has been subtly changed, a spelling has been subtly changed, an address may have a subtle change in it. It might have, 1710 Nowhere Lane, as the address, and yet they remain in there. And I just heard other commentary over the weekend that suggested that even when they get changed, even when somebody calls them out and those are removed, within a few months they go back in again. And the question then becomes, oh my goodness, who is doing this and from where? And like I said, especially in Georgia, we believe that there are millions potentially of voter registrations which are erroneous.
It's every state to make the openings for them to vote. In California, when they decided to mail out the ballots, they didn't think the people would find out how much truth they found out. Did you know that people who wanted to illegally vote, but they wanted to have that ballot available, ballots were mailed to residents' addresses, and somebody is so thorough that they knew the name of the pet. And so if the pet was Misty and the last name was Brown, the pet had a ballot. So they mailed things to that address. And if you had adult children and now they've gone on to college and now they've moved out to Arizona from California, they were still on there. So they were still active voters and they were voting in Arizona. They were no longer residents of California. So none of it's been cleaned up on purpose. There's an agenda, an evil agenda. They knew exactly what to do. Point 43, I think we sliced over the top of it, of point 43, because it's so pervasive about taking us over before we're self-governing. That's point 43. And I didn't even have the Charles Joseph Bonaparte part until FBI because Father didn't reveal it till I did FBI. But within 20, 30 years of our country, they had changed everything. Everything. They moved us in 3 years to DC, knowing what they meant by District of Columbia, knowing that they carved out the 10 square miles called DC and made it their own sovereign soil, made themselves rulers over America from their own sovereign soil as though they're a foreign entity. We didn't know any of this was going on. Then here comes the fake Biden inauguration, and they go to the National Cemetery, and only the president can put the wreath on. It was already on because President Trump put it on before he left. And they do the canon strikes, and the music is funeral of a foreign dignitary. And that's what's represented. And so when you start adding it up, but these are all things we don't know because we've been busy working, putting our kids through school, having plenty of jobs, having plenty of money to put the food on the table. Then we got to be concerned about retirement because Social Security isn't that much. And you see, they've put us on a path that none of these illegals are dealing with.
Yeah.
But before we were established as a country, they had already, and this is back in the book series before the new book, it was high nobles and the Knights of Pythias that were the territorial governors before they were states. And how were the counties in Georgia still the same counties in the 1777 map? When I spoke in Georgia, I shared that map on purpose, and people were shocked because those counties still have the same name. How were those already established before they moved the Native Americans out of there? So a lot of this was already in play. They had a plan before they came. They knew what they were doing in coming here to establish this. Why? They've done this everywhere. They come in and become the rulers. They become the head of state. They come in with identity theft and have taken over the rulership of every nation in the world.
Yeah.
And they ruin them. They ruin them. They steal all their money. Venezuela went from the wealthiest country in 2000 to where they are today.
That's right.
Filled with gangs. Funded by who? Us. People wonder why they want death to America. It's been us doing all of this.
It's been the bad among us, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's the CIA doing it. It's the CIA and Jimmy Carter that did all these elections to make it all democracies, all mob rule, majority rule, mob rule. We're not a democracy, and we keep saying democracy, but we were a republic, which is a form of government of, by, and for the people. And our forefathers gave us that, which is, and people, I just got a videotape. It was so disturbing where the Kennedys were not Kennedys. They were really a mafia family, and that's how they're related to Abraham Lincoln, is because it's this whole mafia line and everything else, and can't trust the Lincolns and can't trust the Kennedys. And I'm like, what is going on here? But you know what one of the major points is? You have to discredit the founding fathers because they want to tell you they have a better way to form this government and be the government in America than the founding fathers. The founding fathers were the ones who got us out of tyranny and set us up for freedom and liberty on the land. They knew the truth. They worked with the Pilgrims and the Native Americans. And then the guys came in from Europe. Monroe said it in 1820. We were a nation not even 30 years. 31 years, inauguration 89. So 31 years. He's already saying this infiltration is so bad. You've brought tyranny right into this country. We have to stop this. And then they had to take him out. On the 31st year of the anniversary of our nation.
Goodness.
55th, 31st year he did that. 55th year they took him out. 50th year they took out Jefferson and Adams. So what we're dealing with is not new, but it's been developed all through our system of government from the very beginning. And that's what point 43 was about. Within 10 years, they did this. I should go back and just put headlines. 5 years, they already did this. 10 years, they already did this. But I just left it in, by 1800, they did this. By 1820, they did this. 1840, they did this. 1850, they did, like that. So we were not a nation, but 60 years, that's 3 20s, and 20 is recycle unto death. They put us into public school compulsory attendance. And that's what started the downfall of the next generations. They already had the top part of the government structured together. When you go back and look at it, they were very effective and very efficient, and they knew exactly what they were doing. And then they just started pulling threads on the fabric of our nation until none of us seemed to get along enough to unite together to come against him. And that was the desire, divide and conquer.
Yep.
So they're still doing it. They're still saying it. They're still communicating it. They're still, their actions prove it. So we've got to stand behind the people who are willing to fight for us right now.
Yep. You mentioned a number of things around the inauguration, and I recall even that day there were a number of reports of people noticing unusual things, including as supposedly Biden was driven by limo on his motorcade following the inauguration as they passed the National Guard. Some of the National Guard troops were turned away. They were facing backwards, which was very notable. That's not what they would normally do. And as you say, the ceremony at the Arlington National Cemetery was in fact a cemetery, a funeral, gun firing. The number, the cadence, everything has been called out as this isn't consistent with an inauguration. This is a funeral. So it's very, the signals are all over the place. And I think we talked in previous weeks about others beginning to say, are there comms everywhere laying in front of us or have been told to us? We just weren't paying attention closely enough.
It's true. It's true because February 28 of 21, I can add to that whole thing of why it was, in essence, that's the only funeral Biden was going to get, was what happened at the National Cemetery, because Biden is gone. The president's just now starting to say again, Biden was executed, and people don't want to believe it. But if you go back to his, and it's still available because people look it up every time I mention it, it's still available out on the internet. It's CPAC, February 28 of 21. And what happened is the president gave, I said, you've got to listen because there's been no State of the Union that confirms that Biden's nowhere.
Right.
And if you think back on those years, nobody even noticed it. They had one when they made such a big deal about it, because I was mentioning it all the time. They did one, but it was in March. And according to their corporation, it has to be done by the end of February. So on February 28 of 21, when it would have been his first one, President Trump had a speech at the end of CPAC, and it was a full, long, very specific, very filled with factual information, State of the Union. And people were contacting me saying, it's going on for so long. Should I keep listening? Should I keep listening? I said, listen to the whole thing. You're not going to get another State of the Union. This is February 28. And nobody knew that, you know what I mean? And so when he got toward the end, it was I'm pretty sure it's in the last 10 minutes. And even friends of mine who have known him for years, who were sitting in the sound booth of the studio, I'm not going to mention their names because they listen to my interviews, but the husband and wife were sitting in the studio booth hearing him do the speech and never heard this. When they went back and watched it, they go, how could I have missed this? The president even made the notations. He was pointing to his left arm and he goes, remember when he got that shot? And remember, we knew there was a plastic cover, so he never really got the shot. But it was all on camera, and a lot of people fell for it and thought he got because that was what it was for. Make people think that we're all getting this shot. And so he said he got the shot in the left, according to the camera. But he always complained about pain in the right. And I can't imagine why he did that, kind of thing. And I'm not saying exactly what the president said. And then he said, but let me think, because I want to be exact. I want to be exact because it was on a specific date. And he's thinking, and he already knows, the president already knows. And he's got that look. And then he goes, yes, it was on December 21 of 20. And when he got that shot, he never complained about pain again. So I immediately went out and I said, guys, he's told us they handled it, because the military asked him to concede the election and he refused. And so he said he would capitulate. And I didn't know what that meant at the time, but capitulate means to surrender. He would capitulate, but they had to bring Hunter in with him. And then the president kept saying after that, anyone seen Hunter? You know where Hunter is? Because Hunter was required to do all of those things. and for the family and everything else. And people wish that nothing had to happen to Hunter, but Hunter, under that pressure, could have made a different choice. He could have turned his dad in, because Bo did, the older brother did, and he told the truth and revealed everything. And I really hope, instead of quickly dying of cancer out of the blue that nobody knew about, I'm really hoping that Bo's okay. But Hunter had to come in with his dad because of what happened. And but it was Biden that said, I'll capitulate if you make Hunter come in with me. What a dad. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
So people said, well, Sheila, I don't know about firing squad. And I said, well, the president made firing squad ahead. And they go, when did he do that? And I said, 14 days before. Do you see how we're using the numbers against them? 14 was on the Georgia Guidestones. 14 were the pieces of Osiris, who was really Nimrod, cut into pieces. And it was a lie about putting the pieces back together, because his mother had relations with him before he died, but she wanted to make it like it was an immaculate conception, just like Christ for Horus, because she became deified as Isis Ishtar in Egypt, and he became deified as Osiris, Nimrod, and his mother Semiramis. And so that 14 is a key thing. Well, you go back 14 days, and what's the day? December 7. Because our guys know it was a setup. We were paying China and Russia against Japan, and that made Japan upset to come and do it on us. And they knew Pearl Harbor was going to happen. They knew the day it was going to happen, but we weren't going into World War II because we found out the truth about war in World War I. So none of the families were going to let their sons go. So they had to create that, just like 9/11 got our guys to volunteer to go into war the next day, because believing men, when you give them a cause, will fight.
Yep.
For the sake of a good cause. And that's what they have done from the beginning of time. And that's why the Civil War was the killing of believing men. And then everything we've been in, Vietnam was a civil war, Korea was a civil war, all these have been a civil war. You get the people fighting each other in their own country, and then you let our guys be killed in the midst of it. It's so evil and pervasive and horrific, and has to stop. And that's why the president said he just stopped another war last week with the signing of Rwanda and the Congo. 34 years they've been at war.
Yep.
And
having so many pieces of success stopping these conflicts around the world is, people I don't think give it its due time to consider what that takes. I mean, these, as you said, these wars have gone on for decades, many of them, and yet in his first few months in office, Trump solved many of these and continues to work to solve the last couple that are floating around here. And most people don't realize that in and of itself is a blessing, a sign, hopefully from God himself, that we are moving to a different posture here.
Well, how can we, as America, heal and come through this? Because everybody has to be working towards unity against evil. And with these wars and keeping these upsets going and funding things to make these upsets happen, the whole thing has been like putting us in a movie our whole life, thinking that all these horrible things are happening around us. When Sony sent me to Japan, this is in points 1 and 2 because of what 1 and 2 is about. We haven't discussed that yet, so I don't want to blow that. But I was on my way to Japan with Sony because I was chair of a committee, and I ended up with that because nobody else wanted to take notes and report in to the corporate office, right? And so I did the notes, I did the reports and reported it in. Well, then I ended up getting the trip to Japan. Well, then everybody wanted to become the chair of the committee, 3-4 years later. And so I end up going to Japan with Sony, and I called my dad about it, and he goes, Sheila, I just don't want you to go. I said, why? And he said, they just want to kill Americans. And we're 30 years after he was in World War II as a medic, and he saw them kill. And he knew why he was in that war. Do you see what I mean? So he still was living the war 30 years later. that I don't think you should go to the Orient, Sheila. I'm very concerned. He's my dad, you know what I mean? And doesn't want me to put myself in harm.
Yeah.
And so we have been living things so horrific because the game was always against us. And that's why now, with the president healing things all around the world and bringing truth, because you don't just have peace. Everybody has to come away from all the stories and the lies to truth. And as all these countries have been doing that, look at how much we're coming closer and closer to truth.
Yeah.
I'm noticing a shift and change. I'm noticing people accepting things I'm saying more. I've had so many apologies for thinking that I was crazy 10 years ago, 12 years, 15 years ago. I always thought you were crazy and the stuff you were mentioning was so outlandish. How could this be? And now I realize you were only giving us the tip of the iceberg because that's all we could handle. I'm
Yeah.
getting so many people realizing that we have not been at the 40,000 foot view to see what's really happening and begin to start to turn it around. Because the only thing that can change America is we, the people, uniting together. And so we've got to start praying about, Father, how can I be used in this? How can I be a blessing to these people? How can I help unity happen in my community? How can I help fix these things? Reveal to me, Father, what I can do on this day. I await the assignment of what I can do. And if I don't understand it, put me in that position to get the job done, because we don't always know exactly. If anybody thinks I knew there were going to be 21 books out anytime in my lifetime and another 8 sitting on the back burner, you don't know me, because none of this was planned. None of this of going to Georgia was planned. None of this, none of it was understood. Only Father knows the end from the beginning. And now even my own cousins are saying, Sheila, look what God has done. And I can't even believe what God has done and what he has shown me. And all I could say is, when people say, I can't believe God's allowed you to go through all these horrible things, I am so sorry God allowed all that. I said, whoa, wait a minute. God knew that I wouldn't let stand what they're doing to people. He knew that I needed to know it, to explain it, define it, fight it, find answers to it, to get us where we need to be. I'm that kind of a person. I didn't know how deep that was inside of me. Father knows how he knew us before we were in our mother's womb. It makes it clear. He knew exactly what we would do. Now, I could have turned away from him. I could have done something else that was easier. Almost everything else in my life has been easier than where I am right now. But Father knew that I wouldn't quit. He knew I wouldn't give up. He knew I would keep saying what he wanted me to say. He knew that I would keep writing these books. Albeit I thought I knew that I was writing it so I could leave Georgia. Hasn't happened. But see, I don't know. His ways are not our ways. And so he's got other things for me to do. And but here we are. And we have to help each other get through, because it's we, the people, in order to form a more perfect union. I cannot emphasize that enough. And that's why they pushed until 64 million abortions happened. And it didn't just stop there. I don't know how many there are now, because I don't know if people are even tracking it anymore. But 64 million messengers coming to this nation. That's a pretty good chunk of the 324 million who are here legally. Might be 327 million. Father, thank you. I don't know the number, but I may be 3 million off. So, but in that number, 64 million is a lot of American messengers that God was sending that didn't make it. Because you talk to any of these children who are still connected with the Father, they've got rich information to share with us. When you see them worship him, it's just a whole different experience. So I just thank you for this time, Bill. I thank you. I don't know if there's anything else today, but
Well, I just wanted to add one facet to this, and that is, you mentioned that, people are paying attention more. They are getting this. And we see that especially with the comments that folks send in. I wanted to acknowledge that and say thank you to all the viewers that take time to make a comment, to say thank you, to give credit to you and all the work that you've done over those 21 books that you didn't know were coming. But you can tell they appreciate it. And many talk about, talking to their families and trying to help their families understand more as well. So all this work is expanding geometrically, and due in large part to your work and folks like you. So thank you for spending the time with us and helping bring people forward in their understanding, belief, and faith.
Well, and the new book we've been working on, we still have a lot of the points to cover, and send in your questions to Bill because we'll answer them. The 45 points, an eternal plan always trumps the human plan. I don't know if you have it handy.
I do.
But
Hang on just a
it's
moment.
now in a hardback. On the 1st of December, it was released in hardback, and the hardback is available on Amazon. People wonder if it's available on the website, and the paperbacks and ebooks are on the website. Paperbacks, I'm printing them in America through the website. They're printed all around the world, and all of those rights were already established around the world. So I've left all those in place, and those are all through Amazon. So if you're in another nation, the print books are on Amazon, and the hardback is only on Amazon. But the ebooks are available for anybody on our website of all these books.
Okay, so let me walk backwards here. We're going to bring up the website so people can see it.
Mm-hmm.
Hisbest.org, yes?
Mm-hmm.
And so they can get the ebooks there, and then, as you say, they're also available. The hardbacks are available on Amazon. And what a wonderful read! Now, especially the latest book, An Eternal Plan, is got a lot to it. How many pages is it?
I narrowed it down to 500.
Narrowed it to
God
500.
had to rein it in. He said, if you would have kept going, it would have been 3,000. And I didn't think it was that, but I know there's things that I wish were in there, but becomes too much. But there are still people who hate to read books, reading this entire book, 500 pages in 3 or 5 days.
Yeah.
The man who did the intro video for me, read it in 2 days. He read half of it in 1 day and the other half the second day. And then in the next 7 days had that video done that's on the homepage.
Yeah. And then in a couple of our last visits, you've spoken of some of the themes coming from Nation Restoration, which is, of course, a wonderful read. And then, of course, the For the Sake of America series, 1 through 5. And you've got, did you say 2 more coming?
There's 3, there's 6 and 7 for the series, and a second edition of Nation Restoration. Nation Restoration, it was General Flynn that asked for the second edition back in 21, because the first one came out in 14, but the one in 14 reveals the infiltration through student visas, through visitor visas. These people have never left our country that came in on visas. They were never required to leave the country. Nobody's been watching because, and that's what I mentioned, but not so much today. We've had people, even in the presidential candidate positions, that are undocumented foreign nationals. Bush was never the name. You talk about what's happened with our voter registration rolls. Bush was never their name. And their name is Scherf out of Germany, and they were all born Germany. So 41 and 43 were not able to be candidate for president. And 42 was a Rockefeller. And so where was his dad? What's his relationship? Because both parents have to be American to run for president. And so it didn't happen for 41 or 43. And that's another that's another platform of taking over a nation, is you go in there and you take over the nation against the Constitution. So they were all operating against our Constitution, where you have to be natural born, meaning your mom and dad have to already be American citizens before you can run for president.
Well, we will look forward to our next chance to get together. Hopefully we'll be able to cover more of those final chapters that we haven't yet gotten to from an Eternal Plan.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, we'll be watching carefully your posts on X through Nation Restoration, your account name on X. And again, we thank you so much for the time that you spent, not just today, but throughout the series to help bring people up to speed.
Well, and if people want the autographed, an autographed copy of the hardback, we're working it out. The details are going to be in the newsletter. So if people haven't gone on the website, there's just subscribe to newsletter, first, last name, and your email. It's just captured by the computer. We're not doing anything else with it and sending out the email, but there'll be a December email coming out this week. And that's going to reveal how we're going to try and work this out with hardbacks. We're going to have to order them and then do everything and then reship them again. And so we're getting all that worked out. And that'll be announced in the December newsletter this week.
Wow, that sounds like fun. All right. Well, we will look forward to next time. Thank you again for being with us, Sheila.
Oh, bless you and thank you.
Bless you.